So M3GAN is absolutely brilliant. Blumhouse Productions really are back with a bang, and they are starting 2023 on with such a high. And M3GAN is such a successful and refreshing new take on the evil doll gone wrong type storyline. And I feel like it achieves everything that the Child's Play reboot wanted to achieve, which by the way, I really enjoyed as well. And M3GAN is just such a brilliant film. What is up everybody, welcome back to my channel Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're having a brilliant day. So in this video we are going to be reviewing M3GAN, which is a science fiction horror comedy movie from horror royalty Jason Blum and James Wan. And it's all about an AI robot that becomes self-aware and causes absolute chaos and carnage in its path in the name of love and protection, but it's so much more than that as well, as it's got such excellent social commentary on parenting, technology, addiction, and corporate business as well. And I love the fact that it doesn't have any perfect characters. All of their characters actually are pretty flawed, which is just so refreshing as well. And I just cannot wait to break it down with you in this movie review. So we're quickly introduced to our main lead character Gemma, who is a roboticist at a toy company, and she creates this lifelike AI robot which is able to do a lot of things, which is actually pretty remarkable. And she relies on this heavily to look after her niece and to pretty much bring up her niece, who she is now the guardian of after her niece's parents very tragically pass away. And the film then explores what happens when this AI doll called M3GAN begins to get a mind of its own, and then it kind of follows the typical path that you have seen before in terms of humans versus AI. But what I absolutely loved is that it does have a bit of a corporate business narrative taking place in the background, which is really cool. Now, from a positive point of view, I think this movie is actually a really dark comedy, as it's got some hilarious one-liners, it's got some pretty humorous sequences taking place, and it's just such a joy to watch from a comedic angle. And if horror isn't really your thing, then I still think you can enjoy this movie, as it's definitely got a PG-13 rating for a reason, as it has got some dark things taking place, but it never really is at the level of, you know, Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer or any other slasher movies really, as the chilling things really are all about the doll kind of having a mind of its own and being at the same brain level and in some ways more superior to humans, and all of the things that M3GAN does, which you wouldn't really expect from a kid's toy companion. And the final few moments of this movie are absolutely gripping, and it's got a true high-octane final act, which is really interesting, as other movies that are a bit of a slow burn have similar brilliant final acts, but I wouldn't really call M3GAN a bit of a slow burn, as it's just so enjoyable, and it definitely does build on itself as the movie is progressing, and still it's able to have a brilliant final act. And if you are waiting for the thriller moments, then the final act really does deliver all of that. And I love the fact that none of the lead characters are portrayed as being perfect humans. If anything, they're shown to be really flawed, and I loved that, as A, they're a lot more relatable, and B, they just kind of feel a lot more real and authentic, which just works so much better, I think, from a narrative perspective. And the fantastic social commentary about technology as a whole was just so fascinating. First, all of the technological advancements that the human race have been able to achieve was really impressive, and also people's obsession with making technology perfect, and then also the business angle of this, all of the potential revenue that you can earn from having the latest tech, as well as the difficulty with all of your competition copying you and simplifying your stuff, and just the need to be really innovative within this space, as well as the tech addiction perspective, especially from a kid's point of view, in terms of, you know, all human interactions are now being replaced with technology, and how parents are not really building that parent-child connection anymore, as technology really is getting in the way, which I feel like M3GAN as a film and as a character is definitely able to capitalize on this. And then another layer is that Gemma, the main lead character, didn't even want to have a child in her future, and now she suddenly has to raise one and have to bring one up. So I think is really interesting, as having a kid is such a big life decision, and the fact that this is suddenly sprung upon her and how she just uses technology to kind of cope with this, I think is actually really fascinating. However, from a negative point of view, you know, if you are waiting and hoping and looking for really dark things to happen from a slasher gore point of view, then you may be a little bit disappointed. But apparently there is an R-rated cut of this film, which apparently has got a lot more bloodier and more gruesome deaths. And also I do think that they could have pushed the corporate angle of this movie a little bit further and just had a little bit more going on. But, you know, that being said, from a storyline perspective, M3GAN is actually really strong. Now let's examine that ending along with some theories on what could happen in M3GAN 2. If you don't want to listen to this bit, then feel free to jump straight to the characters section. But that ending was so good. Like I said, the final few moments of this film, the final act of anything actually, was incredibly gripping and so brilliant. And I love the fact that Gemma realizes that she never had any safety protocols, and the fact that M3GAN then pokes fun at this as well in terms of saying, look, you created me and you didn't put any protocols in place, which is how M3GAN was able to just get a mind of her own and just do whatever she wants to do, and doesn't actually see any harm in killing people, as she justifies this by, you know, humans do this as well. I thought it was a little bit unrealistic how Cady was suddenly on Gemma's side and wanted to protect her, especially how desperate she was in that really intense sequence where she was nearly going to attack the care worker as she just wanted M3GAN so badly, and just one conversation with Gemma and Cady just apparently made Cady just suddenly want to protect Gemma. Like I said, I thought it was a little bit unrealistic, but what I did think was incredible payoff was the fact that they introduced the character of Bruce right at the start of this movie, and then Cady was able to use Bruce to ultimately defeat M3GAN, which I thought was absolutely incredible. And the final few seconds shows that actually M3GAN might have transported all of her data into the Amazon Echo equivalent in this film, and the codes that Kurt, David's assistant, stole are still out there, so M3GAN could use this to reform herself, which I think is going to be so clever, as it then means that M3GAN can be unstoppable. She will be able to enter the World Wide Web and just learn even more and just recreate herself in the sequel, which I think is going to be absolutely incredible. And apparently it has pretty much been greenlit, so we are going to get a M3GAN 2, which I just cannot wait for. So the casting characters of M3GAN are really, really great. Like I said, I love the fact that all of them are pretty flawed, so you don't really know who you're rooting for, but I think it's absolutely brilliant, as they just feel like real characters. You can relate to them a little bit more, and none of them are the perfect victims or the knight in shining armor type characters. So I think it's really, really brilliant what they did from a casting characters perspective. So let's go through them one by one. So first of course we have Allison Williams, who is playing Gemma in this movie, the robot creator, and a truly ambitious tech worker. And I love the fact that they really did show that she really puts her career first, and then what her life suddenly spins into when she suddenly has to look after this young girl and become her guardian and pretty much her new parent, which I think is really difficult for this character, and she didn't really have this as part of her life plan, and now suddenly has to look after this kid and doesn't realize how big of a job this really is and how impressionable kids really are, especially at this young age. So when she has created successfully this M3GAN robot, then she overly relies on M3GAN to pretty much raise Cady for her. And I think Allison Williams is so great in this movie. Of course, she rose to fame in Get Out, where she was just absolutely unbelievable. And I do think it's pretty impressive actually from this character's point of view that actually she just was so desperate to create this robot and to really demonstrate how talented she is. And she could have got a raise, she could have got a promotion, she could have been even more successful, but she really did the right thing in terms of not allowing M3GAN to go mass market and to potentially have all these killer robots out in the world. Speaking of M3GAN, now let's look at M3GAN the robot, who was absolutely brilliant, both from a physical perspective. She looked absolutely unbelievable, and also from a verbal point of view, she was so funny, especially the sequences that she has between her and Gemma right at the end of this movie, when Gemma is realizing what went wrong with M3GAN, which I thought was so good. On that point, all of the one-to-one sequences between M3GAN and another character are absolute chef's kiss. I think they're so good, and I actually think that M3GAN does come across in the beginning of this movie as the ultimate best friend and really does help her. So you can really quickly see how kids can become pretty addicted to this lifelike robot. I would have wanted to see M3GAN doing a bit more gruesome, evil stuff, if I'm being honest, in this movie, but of course in the R-rated cut, we'll see it there. And then of course we have Cady, who you do really feel absolutely heartbroken for, as of course her parents died so tragically at the start of this movie. And actually, I feel like her trajectory across this movie is absolutely brilliant, as she felt a little bit like a nuisance when she first has to live with Gemma, and just the sequences involving her, Gemma, and the social worker I thought was just so heartbreaking. And then just how suddenly her life changes when she gets hold of M3GAN, and how she's able to bring her lightness back into her and how she's able to be a normal child again. I just think you can really understand and see firsthand the addiction, the technology addiction that she has with this character. And then suddenly when M3GAN is taken away from her, just how she can't process how on earth she's going to move forward, as her whole life has become attached now to M3GAN. So like I said, this character was absolutely brilliant, and the things that happened with this character right at the end of this movie is equally brilliant. So Cady was so good in this film, and you really do get to see the impact of abandonment from loads of different characters towards Cady really brilliantly in this film. So from a casting character's point of view, I have to say M3GAN is actually really awesome. So from a visuals point of view, this movie is just so brilliant. Firstly, M3GAN as an AI robot character just looks really, really believable, both realistic from a technology point of view as well as being really, really creepy, especially as this movie progresses. You just get even more creeped out by this AI robot, which I think is absolutely incredible from what they've achieved given the budget that they had on this film. Speaking of robots, I love the fact that you get to be invited into this robot technology company, which is always really forward thinking and is creating brand new technology, super innovative, and I absolutely loved getting an inside look into what Silicon Valley could be like. Like I said before, it would have been cool to see some of the more darker things that M3GAN is doing so that it is able to be similar to the Child's Play movies, but like I said, I'm sure that will be seen in the R-rated cut. So from a visuals perspective, M3GAN is actually looking really, really wicked. So from a comparison point of view, like I just mentioned, of course, you can directly compare M3GAN to the Child's Play reboot, which is pretty much doing the exact same thing in terms of a lifelike AI robot being created that just learns and becomes more and more evil in the name of trying to protect its owner. I guess you could compare it to the original Chucky and Child's Play movies, but I feel like it is definitely a lot more comparable, directly comparable to the recently released reboot. I think you can also similarly compare it to Annabelle in terms of a girl's doll going evil, but of course this one has got a lot more of a tech addiction perspective. In terms of other horror thriller movies, maybe you could compare it to I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, but it is less of a slasher movie, even though it does have a couple of slasher moments in there. I think it's definitely more in the category of being a horror tech film, as opposed to a person in a mask killing loads of other people. And from that AI perspective, I guess you can also compare it to The Matrix in terms of AI going wrong, as well as Ex Machina in terms of an AI robot learning really rapidly, really quickly, and then outsmarting humans and then causing a lot of death and destruction in its path, which means you can also compare it to iRobot. And I guess from a kid's point of view, you could compare it a little bit to Ron's Gone Wrong, even though that is a bit of an animation and a slightly different tone as well. But you know, from a comparison perspective, M3GAN is just entering this genre really, really well. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed M3GAN. I think it's such a refreshing new take within this awesome genre. And I think a really good measure of enjoyment of a movie is when you would want the movie to go on for even longer and to see even more stuff taking place, which just means M3GAN was just absolutely awesome. And for all of those reasons, I have to give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear what you thought of M3GAN, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.